Door just in case.
Well, good evening, everyone. This is Keith with Positively Osceola and another one of our Osceola Matters live shows. I often show this whenever I'm doing a show, and so many people ask us if they're just props, or do we truly imbibe a vast amount of caffeine-based beverages? Answer: it is not a prop. So I thought I'd start the show out with that real quick, and but we do get to say this, and we say it with all sincerity that we are super blessed to be able to have guests on whatever our show is. We have just a vast amount of people that are wonderful and are active in the community, and they're all about the community, and they're doing great things. And but we are super excited tonight because we've got a couple great friends with us tonight, and we're going to introduce them to you. And they are from Huntington Learning Center in St. Cloud, and that is the one and only Wong, of course, and Will Morea. So let's welcome them to our show this evening. Bam! As if we rehearsed it.
Like clockwork.
Good evening, Keith.
How you guys doing? All right?
We're great. Thank you.
Cool.
Nice to be back here.
It's good to see you guys. Sometimes the best of our guests are obviously because they're good at what they do, and of course I'm speaking of you guys. It's challenging to get these shows off because we're just trying to figure out how we fit it all in, and of course then we get towards the holiday season. So I know you guys are busy. So why don't you tell us how things going these days?
Yes, glad to be back. We've been busy, as you alluded to. Test seasons, report cards are out for the last 2 quarters. Parents are very anxious as to how to help their students who are not definitely, on par, if not, not knowing how to study and how to prep for tests and do their homework. So we're definitely working with our lower grade students on those skills. As far as our older students, they're definitely getting ready to, pave their way into college. So the college entrance process is important to share with the community as to when to do what, when to prepare, when to research the top 20 schools, and apply for them. What are these scholarship opportunities? So we've been busy helping these students ranging from K to 12.
Well, you have chosen a busy career for sure, both of you guys, and so it's not a shock that you would be busy right now. We got a few people popping on for sure, so if you don't mind, let's go ahead and make it official, okay?
Sounds good.
Here we go. Well, again, welcome back. And tonight's Osceola Matters show is, turn my volume down a little bit. This show is certainly going to feature the world of education, and that in a hyper-local sense. And it's exciting to me because we have such a connection with the school district of Osceola County. And I think anybody would say that the last almost 2 years now, certainly, pandemic affected the world we live in, certainly has really affected the education world. And I mean, you hear that from the West Coast to the East Coast, from the North to the South. It has touched every school. It has touched basically every student. And that is kind of, that is kind of when you came on the scene pretty much. And you must have, I'm sure you were shaking your head a bit, but I don't know how we would have in this particular environment. I don't know that it's almost impossible to measure from where we sit. The number of families both of you have really affected in a positive way. Students of all ages, and I know as I've said, as you and I both know, or all three of us know, my son included. So personal testimony for sure. But for those people who might not know about Huntington Learning Center, and specifically in St. Cloud in the Osceola County area, why don't you give us the lowdown? Introduce yourselves, please, and introduce what Huntington does for the community educationally, please.
Absolutely. Thank you, Keith. Good evening, everybody. My name is Wei Wei. I'm the Executive Director of Huntington Learning Center of St. Cloud, Kissimmee. We are a 44 years old strong company with 300 centers in North America. This is one of the 300. And as Keith, that you have perfectly said, we started the business helping families. At the same time, the pandemic hits the ground. So it has not been easy, but we are proud to say that we have sustained it all this time through ups and downs, hardships of trying to deliver the best education possible, which is the Huntington, model. And we have succeeded it with over 140 plus families impacts that we have been able to do since we opened the center door. And Keith, you have said it perfectly. Last year and this year, total of two, has not been easy. The academic school year of 2020 almost it's a wipe off, a non-existent to many students who struggles to learn partially online, and when they return to school, they continue to fall behind, and plus the summer. So we are now doing a lot of catch-up work through the supplemental education that we so proud ourselves with the Huntington model, which is oftentimes one-to-one, building that foundational skills in reading and math, one student at a time. And for older students, we help them achieve their goals in the exam prepping process in SAT and ACT and any other state assessment-wise exams where they are able to gain the perfect scores that they need to enter the schools of their dreams and the scholarship opportunity. So my staff and I and the teachers are the one that are the sort of the magical workers in our center that delivers not only a very robust curriculum, but to be able to impact with their passion and their teaching techniques and skills that they have learned from their certification. So we're most proud of our teacher team as well as our staffs here. They're dedicated people. They're not just here to earn a living. They're truly here to make an impact in students' lives. So credit to you, Keith, for creating a platform like this where we can be, sharing our thoughts on a weekly basis and resources available to our community, which is a big part of what Huntington does. Not just helping students as a business, but also providing the same kind of education and resources, materials for our community for free on a frequent basis.
So one of the nicer things about being able to be in a discussion with you two is that you're going to be doing almost all the talking. because you're experts in that. You're expert, yeah. You're both experts in this hugely. So let me ask you this, and however you want to respond to this, please. We have a number of different things we can cover tonight for sure, all of which are hugely important issues and hugely important opportunities. Well, let's keep it. It just hit me as you were speaking, Wei Wei. So what does that target student look like to you? I've got to think that parents, the school year is a huge blur sometimes, and I think you're getting caught in okay, what parts of the journey can I focus on? Should I focus on extracurricular for my kids? Should I just get into the nuts and bolts of their grades so that those other options are for them when they do graduate or before they graduate? So, it can become a blur, I think, as a parent, and cause maybe no action at all. And I just think that sometimes your kids go through the journey and you get to the end and you go, okay, now we're going to figure this out. But that's obviously not the optimum way to do things. So who are the targets that would highly benefit from what you do? And parents and students? What's that target audience you have?
I mean, that's a good question for our, managing director here, Mr. Morea, this way or that way. Should it be this way?
Point.
To help. Exactly. We don't know directions. That's part of we should create new courses.
But when it comes to the ideal student, Keith, I mean, there's no one size fit all model here. I mean, we have students as young as kindergarten who really need that help in building their phonics foundations, reading comprehension, math basics. We get a lot of students in that grade 3 to 8 range when it comes to what we call learning center instruction, which is when we do sit down, as we alluded to, with a teacher working primarily one-to-one with the student in need, because there's a myriad of qualities that would make them come here in the first place that the parent might notice, like obviously sons or daughters' grades are not up there, but they're struggling with reading, they're just losing focus, they're not really getting anything that the teacher is telling them. And the problem is these gaps have a tendency of widening as the years progress, so that if we don't address this right away, then it can potentially get worse, which is why, in my opinion, there is no ideal one student, whether the student's a kindergartner, whether a fifth grader, whether they're a high schooler prepping for the SAT or the ACT. The time is now to close the gap and to fulfill the goals that the student may need, whether it's just to get caught up for the grade level as it relates to K through 5, K to 8, even some high school students, and then of course the older kids. Very ambitious bunch here in the Osceola County area. They want to go to the UCFs of the world, USFs, UF, but those schools all but demand a very high entrance exam. So when we get some kids who need several points on the ACT or several hundred points on the SAT, it doesn't really matter what school they attend or when they find us. The fact that they're ultimately here right now is what ultimately matters as it relates to getting them the help that they so rightfully deserve.
Well said. So how does that look? So let's go ahead and talk about how this looks. So if I'm a parent, I'm recognizing that my student is that there is a gap. Maybe the school brings that to the attention of the family. Perhaps it's a family discussion, however that looks. So how does the action begin? What do we literally, if I'm a parent and I realize, look, I just don't have the answer. I'm working 55 hours a week. I love my kid or my kids. I want the best for them. I just don't know how to fit that in. How can I possibly do that? So how does it all begin? What does a parent that's concerned, what do they do to connect with you?
That's a very good question, Keith. The first thing is obviously to find out, what are in needs to help the students, right? The academic baseline is the first to every success story. We need to find out where Johnny or Mary needs academically to be successful. Are we looking at foundational gaps in reading and math? Are we looking at lack of academic skills in terms of study skills, how to complete homework, study for test, quiz? Are we lacking motivations and confidence because the lack of those skills? So all of that are the first line of attack to find out where are the missing holes here in the foundation of the child's academic. So as a parent, I've done that. And so as many of our Huntington families would seek out to do a full academic evaluation at our center, which we do a very long, lengthy study, break by breaks, academically, tracing back, if you're a lower grade student, to your phonics skill, your reading comprehension, your sight word ability, your independent oral and silent reading, your math skills, your standardized testing. So throughout that, very large, expensive list of library of testing, we will have enough data to create a data-driven model to help you systematically, knowing this is not just a guessing kind of model. It is a solid model based on truly what is lacking. And as I was previously shared, that motivation and confidence builds upon what? Skills. Most of our students are lack of those skills. Therefore, they're timid to ask questions when they needed help in the classroom.
Right.
They're not motivated to do things on their own because they can't. So that lack of skill is pretty much the answers to all these problems. And we start with that with a full academic evaluation just to find out what are those missing skills.
Gotcha. So in that, as I've changed the formatting a little bit so that I can show this for those people who want to reach out to you guys. So how have you, I actually know this particular answer. So would you like to share how you have consistently communicated certain, I want to say educational issues, addressing certain issues that are out there, that part of what you do as far as the Thursday webinars? Could you explain a little bit about that approach, and then maybe even the next webinar, if you want to talk about that a little bit?
Mr. Will, would you like to share with us?
Well, one of the hidden secrets of Huntington is that they do offer as a free service, especially to the communities. It is not just even, locally, it can be really nationwide, but Huntington does offer these webinar series on so many topics that are very timely over the course of a given year. Like I know that example in October, they had a very powerful webinar on how to stop and recognize bullying. In fact, you and I had a fairly lengthy live stream about that, Keith and Center. Remember that?
Yep.
That's one very good example. Then I know that as always, going into school, August, September, they always have these back to school tips and strategies when it comes to, say, spring break. It's knowing how to not let your son or daughter just ease up on the gas pedal and just know how to just finish the year strong. And certainly, as always, during summer, just providing all these resources and avenues that your son or daughter can go down towards, such as Reading Adventure that we do sponsor as a yearly, reading resource, if you will, as also being able to actively make good use of time so that you don't have that brain drain that tends to exist during summer. If you don't put it to use academically, if not through us in Huntington and other means, then there's a reason why there's that slide when kids come back to school the first time in August. If you don't use it actively for an academic format, then just going back to school hits them harder than they were at back in May when to end the school year too. But obviously that's just a very helpful resource that we have as well. And then, as always, we reach out by these live streams for Positively Osceola. We always want to make it known that, we exist, that we're not just some, small little place here. We're growing, we're expanding. I mean, this has been a very momentous leap forward for us this year in terms of the overall number of students we've impacted, just the number of families we've reached out. And to piggyback off Weiwei's point about how students come to us, I mean, the referrals are myriad. In fact, I literally just today, Keith, I had a family walk in because they found out about us through Google because we had better reviews than some other tutoring centers nearby. No doubt a consequence, not only of what we're doing in center from top down, but really from bottom up with all of our great teachers on staff and the curriculum that we have that is really specifically tied to certain skill sets that students might be lacking or struggling with. And then, there are other examples where we just had a granddad the other day pass us by because he saw our sign on his way to a car wash nearby. And he's like, I need to give these people a chance and talk it over. We had a chance to not only test his grandson out, but we recently have enrolled him, and we're looking forward to having him start with us as early as tomorrow. So obviously, the parents will know about us through school partnerships around the immediate community with some, elementary, middle, and high schools nearby. I mean, we have people find out about us through Facebook. We're very active on there. I know that we share a lot of posts, both through, corporate as well as our own organic matter as it relates to, bringing it to mind that this is a very particular, the day of something, if it's academically themed, like, did you know that today is National read a poem out loud day or something? Who knows? It could be one of those days we make it known so that at least that the parents out there are like, these people, they're really speaking a lot of truth here. I need to find out what's more is going on. So really just we're being very creative in how we reach out to the parents, and in so doing that, we've gotten a lot of walk-ins and a lot of phone calls saying, I'd like to know more about your services, and not just from one stream of information, from all these avenues. And that's what is really helping us sustain our business pretty strongly this year and ongoing, is that we have all these methods of parents finding out about us, but more importantly, believing in us enough to say good things about us, word of mouth, online, in person, you name it. So we're definitely made some great gains this year compared to certainly last year, and I'm very excited to see what 2022 has in store for us, for sure.
So I've got to believe, again, this is just a wide open question type thing. So I've got to believe you really have, you're on the pulse of what's happening in the school district. Obviously, you have to be. That's got to be a huge investment in time for you, because if you weren't aware, I know you are. If you weren't aware of what's being taught in this district, how are you going to literally apply that help that you have structured to what they're learning? And so I know you are. That's got to be a challenge for what you do, making sure you're staying on top of what they're teaching in the school district. Is that I've got to think that's a good investment of time on your part, making sure you're on target with that. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's absolutely correct, Keith. We not only provide a very robust curriculum based on what each state's and district's standard, but it's also in tune with what FSA or the future FAST testing requirements of our students by grade, so that we know what they need to learn and be succeeding in at reading, ELA, social studies, science, and also in math. So those grades are being kept up throughout our entire Huntington learning system in the entire North America. So it's not just one school districts, it's the entire US, and all our curriculums has taken those into considerations and comparisons to every district's requirements. The second layer of our success also built upon our relationship that we build with the school. So every child enrolled into our Huntington Center, we're not only just their supplemental education provider, a tutoring center, if you will, we're also part of their coaching, their study skills building developer. So we help them to build motivations and confidence through the new skills that they are earning academically. We're helping them learn how to study and be better students overall, which will be part of this week's webinar. As you have asked, what will be the new topic? So we can talk a little bit about that, tips on how to improve your child's study skill in a little bit. But we also becomes their friends and their guidance counselor, if you will, and we work with the school. So every child that is a student enrolled into our Huntington program, we regularly go school visit their classroom teacher, their high school or school guidance counselor. We share notes about what Johnny's learning and here in the center as well as school, to see and make sure those skills are being transformed and transcending successfully in the learning environment. Because the last thing you need to have is by learning two different systems and confuse the student. So it is very important, and it's truly Huntington's passion and belief that whatever they learn here has to be transcending in the school environment, which becomes their new skill, new knowledge, so that they can carry on for many years to go.
So I think it's something we haven't really chatted about before, but when you were talking, it hit me that this really isn't just, correct me if I'm wrong, but this isn't just an academic improvement scenario. This really is life changing in that. I'm not even coming close to overstating that. I think that all too often kids who are struggling, and you see this all the time, the kids that are struggling, it starts to weigh down who they are. They're not finding those inward successes. They know they're having struggles, and so there has to weigh down on their self-esteem, how they interact with other people, their peers. They know they're not maybe succeeding in an area where a student that they are great friends with, that student may be succeeding. That's got to weigh down on the kids, and that must be a success for you to be able to, both of you, to be able to watch the turnaround for a student that suddenly knows, hey, I can do this.
Right.
That's got to be a big win for you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. Those are the one that kind of wipes off all the hardship that we have to go through, the long hours, the working on the weekends, and sudden change of crazy schedules to accommodate everybody, to make sure everybody's happy, including you, Keith.
That's right.
Where last minute classes has to be squeezed into and make available. Yeah, I mean, joking aside, I mean, you brought up exactly what makes our heart sing is are those moments where we impact a student and changing from a typical target to be bullied at school, for instance, because they're timid, they're shy, they're different, they're afraid to ask questions when they need help. Those are the vulnerable targets that we talked about last month, during the National Bullying Awareness Month. We don't want to have any of those students, right? But we know they exist out there. And a lot of time it stems from the lack of academic success that impacts how you see yourself. And this is the light sensor that Mr. Wu was talking about. So my room is energy friendly. It's driven by a sensor. So if I got dark, it's just because the sensor decided to go to sleep. So those students tend to be the targets because of the lack of academic success, which drive their self-esteem, like you said, down, the lack of confidence. Therefore, they're not motivated.
Right.
So they appear to be lazy to parents and school. They appear to be those forgotten bunch, right? And when we see those students come here, they immediately feel the atmosphere is different, starting from the first day that they were tested. They say, wow, we're special here. We're being paid attention to. Our words matters.
Right.
Teachers listen to our comments. They regularly ask about how I'm feeling about the program. How are you seeing these skills that you're learning here are being used in school? How's your homework life now? Are you struggling for hours on ends to just complete them? Are you able to do them independently? Do you need to always rely on your parents or adults to help you? So those are the things that they are gaining skills on, which boosts their confidence and self-esteem. And we are seeing students that tested nationally at below 2-digit percentiles now into the 80 and 90 percentile, being in an honor roll, being the front of the classroom, raising hands to answer questions when the teachers ask for them. So those are the moments that truly make us very proud for the long hours and the hard labors that we put into our programs. We look at every student periodically to adjust their program based on their gains. If they are struggling with one curriculum, we methodically look at what other curriculum can benefit this particular student. That's how far we would go into investing every single curriculum, chapter by chapter, unit by unit, to make sure they're study successfully for the skill sets that student needs to be continue to improve and be successful in their classroom. So I would definitely agree with you, Keith. This is not your ordinary Me Too company. There's no one single company out there that I will part myself with other than Huntington. And I work with all of them as a computer engineer. I have worked with so many of Huntington's competitors, and I did not choose to become one of them for this very single reason, because this is a company truly put student first.
I love that. I know that. I don't think you're ever going to hear all the compliments that get said about what you guys have done. I know, and I'm not trying to just make it an admiration evening only, but reality is, I think what happens is families say things over the dinner table, like as I know happened in my house when I said, I don't think we could have done this, and I don't think my son could have gotten where he got so quickly had he not worked with you guys, and certainly. Mr. Will, you knocked it out of the ballpark for him, and then they get to take it from there sometimes, and it's a big deal when you've been respected, like you said, as a student. It changes how they feel about themselves. So big deal there. So do you want to talk a little bit about this week's webinar, or do you have something else you'd like to chat about first?
Yeah, this week's webinar is my passion about, helping students learn how to study and gain those study skills that really work. So I'd like to give out some, points on that upcoming webinar, getting our community excited about joining this great series. And then maybe if we have any time left at all, Mr. Will, if you would like to maybe educate us a little bit about the college entrance process, from freshman through senior years, that will be a great topics for a lot of students. I get a lot of question about that. So if you would like to talk a little bit about that after the study skills webinar, that would be great. What do you guys think?
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay. Awesome. I get a thumbs up there. So, okay, thank you. So this Thursday's webinar is about, tips and general ideas as to how to improve a student's study skill. It sounds so, general, and you would think that's common sense. Study skills means pay attention to and have a routine schedule, so forth and so on. But there's a lot of scientific facts into it. How to do it effectively is the difference, right? So you want to choose, spend 10 hours, getting 10 hours values for spending 4 hours to study. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So we want to study smart, building our students to have those skills that they can actually do it independently without mommy and daddy from the kitchen overlooking their shoulders, screaming over across rooms to get them to do their homework, right? That's not the kind of student we will be expecting for a future, successful academia. So starts early. This webinar will teach you a lot of great tips, importantly, about the truth about studying, right? What are some of the myths? So I just kind of pointed out, and also bench studying. Do you do all-nighter the night before the exam? We all kind of did that in our youth. You cram it, you get so tired the next day, you possibly did not get the optimal results just because you stay up all night. Right. So a lot of those that need to be kind of demyths, so the student don't get trapped into these, so-called great tips to last minute studying and in order to get good grades. Those are just not true. It's all effort driven. The other things that the webinar will talk about is self-awareness and studying. What does that mean, self-awareness and studying? So that's a really great topic. I'm very passionate about a growth mindset that we're developing in our students in this center in our school, which is to build a student to be thinking how they see themselves as a student, as a child, as a community member, whether it's a soccer team or a baseball team or a church member. They need to be aware of who they are and how their action will impact where they belong. Mm-hmm. So for instance, in school, there obviously is a student. If they are not self-aware of those responsibility and the roles that they play, there will not be any kind of accountability that they will think when they're studying. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So it doesn't matter if I get a bad grade. It's not how I see myself. It's also how I see myself in the role that I play. So that's where you start to build a growth mindset to hold student accountability. It sounds very complicated, but it can definitely be taught at a very young age that they need to know their role to be a good citizen body in the school is to get good grades, to be able to understand and be able to deliver what the expectation of the teacher. So by not having any responsibility, you won't be able to get them to commit to a good learning pattern, a good learning routine. So that's what the self-awareness and studying topic that the expert will be able to share with these families. There will also be 10 steps to improve your child's study skills. These are really good takeaway points that parents and families can look to implement with their own students. These are very systematic kind of approach, more of getting down to the nitty-gritties. So those 10 steps will be things that I want parents to pay attention to. If they don't have chance to watch it live, at least register so that they can we watch the video and pay attention to those 10 steps. Also, the last not the least is how we implement study skills program at Huntington. There's a full program, Keith, about how to study. It's not just about, well, how do you prepare for an exam? How do you prepare for a test? How do you complete your homework? But it's the entire mindset change from the way you take notes and how to take notes, right? And the layout of the note-taking skills. It in itself is a huge, in-depth course that you can easily take at college. But Why wait till college? Right now is the time, like Mr. Will said, is the urgency of building those skills so that you can continue to be successful for years to come. So just a little bit of sneak preview, if you will, a tip on the iceberg of what those 10 steps are, if I may. So behavior modification, it's a big topic of step one, right? That self-awareness. Think about who they are, what they're ultimately being held responsible as a student. Step two, we're not going to study more than an hour at a time without taking a break. So break taking is a very good, routine exercise. When you go work out with a fitness coach, they will tell you take incremental small breaks in between sessions. That gives you time to breathe better, be aware of the exercise that you've just done. Same thing with study skills too. So take some breaks, smart breaks in incrementally during your study routine. Number three, for instance, steps that separates the study of certain subjects that are important. So if you're studying on algebra or something that is very heavy, logically using your right brain to figure out certain math, you're not going to go right into another very heavy right-brained subjects like chemistry or physics. It would be good to separate into maybe do liberal arts study, read something about U.S. literature, do a social studies kind of subject on your next. Give your brain a little bit of rejuvenation to learn a different category of skills. So that's proven very successful too in terms of build up that into your study routine. Like step four, do not study when you're tired. Common sense. Do not do an all-nighter, right? Don't burn those late night oil. Last minute bench study has been proven over the history of mankind. They don't work. Don't do that. Pace yourself better. Do not, not sleep, especially if you're an exam prep student. Mr. Will tell you always get a good night's sleep before the exam prep. Tip five, prepare for your class at the best time. So what does that mean, prepare for your class at the best time? This is more applicable for students that are in a higher grades like high school and beyond, especially in college. Do not prep for a class when a class is going to be very interactive, right? If your teachers and your professors going to ask a lot of questions, prepare for that class before the class. You're not going to remember a lot of those interactive dialogues if you prepare 3 weeks before that, right? But if that class is going to require a lot of self-production materials, meaning you're going to recite a lot of things that have been taught previously, then you should, prepare ahead of time. Give yourself some time to rewrite some of those materials over and over again. Step six, use the best note-taking system for yourself. Whatever works, don't just go with the one-size-fits-all kind of, scale. Look at some couple models. The best that we always talk to students about a note-taking skills is to dumb down the big concept into your own abstract, right? So write a small paragraph of what you just take away from that huge essays that you just read,
Right.
in terms of place, characters, times, what is the main idea, and some of those important details. Obviously, Keith, you have to be a good reader and writer to be able to do that, right? So going back to those foundational skills, they are very important to close those gaps early on. So for instance, the next step will be memorizing your material in an active mode, but not in a passive mode. What does that mean is try to remember your textbook materials in a light, fun ways. Turn them into a visual image. A song sometimes can also help with students that are very inclined with good musical talents, but visualization of a picture of the material that you try to memorize always help. Some people associate it with numbers too. So these are what we call a active memorization techniques instead of just try to bang your head against the wall. I must memorize this word by word, right? We all have those experience. If you have a visual image when you try to remember a certain subject, you can always recall a lot more effectively. So I'm just going down some of these and highlights, but our expert will go down in much more detail at length and take some QA during the session too. So for instance, step 8 or tips 8 will be read and study at the same time. So you're not going to read and then not to do a follow-up, post-read notes. So make sure that you take good notes right after you read a content for a certain subject, whether it's math, science, or social study. Immediately go right into doing some studying and drooling on that subject. Don't just read and then take off, because your temporary memory is not being saved and reinforced, and it's going to be a lot less likely that will be effective when you come back. You're likely to have to reread some of those material. I think we all have this kind of experience in the past. Like step 9, make sure that this go back to the note-taking skills. I love this because it really helped visualize with certain important part of the reading process. And it helps with student with ADHD and student also battle with dyslexia. It's to use a color scheme note-taking system. Like for instance, you want to highlight the main ideas in red, blue could be the dates and numbers and the years of the event. Yellow could be the supporting facts. And then circle and different geometric shapes to identify certain things that will scream out to you. Just not highlighting everything and underlying everything. I used to have a roommate that her books are like Christmas trees. Everything was colored, the entire page. The entire page was underlined with every single word. So I would often challenge her. So why don't you just memorize the whole book if you're going to highlight the entire thing word to word? So it defeat the purpose of highlighting those essence. So having a system where you kind of get used to that, when you are taking an exam prep, and Mr. Wu can elaborate on this too, you kind of have that visualization of recalling that color that you use immediately. So when you're seeing the main idea, you're immediately highlighting them in red. So when you're going back to your question prompt, you can almost see that in the text. So that kind of techniques is what we want students to build when they're studying. They will be most beneficial when it comes to exam time. Again, number 10 is kind of like a no-brainer. Don't buy any text or don't go online with those materials that have everything underlined. It loses its own effectiveness, right? If you're buying a used book, it's written all over it, everything is underlined. Without your own unique touch, those will not be, even it may save a buck or two, those will not be the good resource to go to. Again, so we're down to the weeds, right, about the how to, but this will be a great webinar to truly learn some of those skills and ask the expert some questions if you're able to join online. But personally, I love this series because we're 3 months into the school years. A lot of students, not only they're lacking the foundational skills of how to study, but they don't know how to study, period, without their parents. You'll be surprised, Keith, I will have 9 out of 10 students that has a blank agenda book. Year to date, they have not written one single note in their agenda. So again, that's to tell you how important an effective study skill can impact a student's academic life.
I unfortunately related to the lack of control when it came to highlighting. I don't want to talk about it at great length, but it's my personality, and my highlighting skills were unbelievably excellent, except when it didn't do anything because the whole book was yellow or the whole book was, I mean, that's just for real. So something hit me when you were talking, Wei, and thank you for all of that. So if you're a parent, how are you encouraging parents to be a part of, I think I might know this answer. Are you encouraging parents to be part of that webinar as well, sitting with the student? If the student can't be there, but the parent can be, are you encouraging the parents to be part of that webinar so they can bring this content to the student? What are you finding? Mostly students, a mixture?
That's a great question. I would definitely, I mean, Mr. will chime in at any time. I would recommend any student below middle school level, the parents should take notes for them and try to implement these with the younger students, because they themselves will not be able to grasp all the concepts, right? And they may not be able to take down good notes about these points. So I certainly recommend middle school and below, have the parents attend the webinar, take the notes, and try to implement these at home.
Sure.
Middle school and high schoolers, those parents should watch with the students.
Right.
The students should attempt to take notes. That's a good starting point to see how well they are able to grasp information that is being presented to them. Take some notes down with the parents, and parents go over that with the student after the webinar, and then talk about what will be the best way to implement some of these ideas right off the back. It doesn't cost money. All of these ideas are just efforts, right? And prioritization based on how the student currently is studying, and how poor or great their study skill, and where need to be adjusted. So that's what I would recommend. For older students that are high school and beyond, they should be able to watch this independently and implement these, and take proactive measure keys to adjust their study skills and study routine.
Awesome. And so I think we should probably tell people, if we haven't already, we should tell people, how do they register for, as an example, this Thursday's absolutely free webinar? Let's go ahead and make that real clear for people.
Absolutely. Go to huntingtonhelps.com. It's a location-based website. So no matter where you search that, enter that URL, which is huntingtonhelps.com, it will bring you up to the St. Cloud location, Kissimmee, where we are. And you can go under resources link. Under resource link, there's a webinar link. If you click on webinar, this 10 steps to improve your children's study skills should be the first one that comes to the top.
Great.
Register there, and it will just send you a quick link to save the videos, and you can watch it live if you're able to at 1 p.m. on Thursday, November 18, or you can save it afterward. It will send you a reminder and say, hey, we miss you, but here's a link to the video so that you can watch it in your own time.
Very good. We'll make sure we put that link on this post once we're finished as well, and we're going to send that out as well, just in some other manner. But it is a very simple process. It is a couple clicks, you're registered, off you go. Super easy to comprehend, super easy to register. So that's this Thursday, 1 o'clock. Be there, be square. Tell your friends, tell your neighbors. You mentioned, if there's anything else you want to talk about the webinar, by all means, let's do that. But you mentioned you were going to ask Will to brief something in the college area. Is that true?
Yeah, I think, Mr. Will, I think the rest of the 300 centers will probably wanted to have a Mr. Will in their center too. It's a great resource to exam preps and college students, high school students who wants to go to college, because number one, as you were bringing it up before, he's a great teacher, right? He's also one of our best exam prep teacher who's able to bring our students upward of 300 plus points on their SAT, and then upward of 10 points on ACT. So we're very proud of his accomplishment and his knowledge and expertise. So what we have created as a corporate, a roadmap of how you should prepare for college, step by step, from freshman year all the way to senior years. So I thought, what will be better than hearing from an expert himself illustrating these steps. So I thought, if Mr. Will, if you're in agreement to enlighten us with some of these highlighted steps, that would be great for our students.
There's a reason I wear this crown lapel right here, everybody, okay? Not trying to be braggadocious about it, but obviously, to Ms. Weiwei's point, certainly part of our bread and butter of being here at Huntington is the exam prep side of business. And I recall that I've been with Huntington now almost 8 years now, and I first started primarily as an exam prep tutor because I scored well enough on ACT and SAT, and apparently I was able to impart knowledge to the high schoolers for them to kind of get it and improve their scores. And obviously, since being here in St. Cloud this past August, I've personally worked with even a handful of students for whom we can celebrate and say, hey, this person was able to get into Florida State because they got a score increase, or he was able to achieve Florida Bright Future because he got a 320-point score increase on the SAT. But to Weiwei's point, certainly preparing for college entrance exams like the ACT and the SAT is not an overnight thing. You really need to build that roadmap really pretty much from freshman year onward. So if you want to pull up that PDF, and I'll try to go through what I can here before my laptop's battery is almost dying on me, but I think I have enough juice to get us through this live stream tonight. So obviously you'll notice here that freshman year, if we can see it, maybe blow it up a little bit more. There's not a lot to say about freshman year other than to say, challenge yourself, try to get even a few honors courses on your belt, and start planning ahead for the future. I mean, obviously every high school has at least one, if not multiple guidance counselors, and it literally is their job to be available to be of assistance to all these, underclassmen in particular who want to get ahead of the program, who want to know what honors courses exist, how can I take AP courses as young as possibly even, I think, freshman and sophomore year, there's a few AP courses, but primarily junior and senior year. Because really, when it comes to building up that impressive resume to ultimately get into a dream college or to get that scholarship goal, you really do have to start almost from the very beginning. Not to say that the kids that we see who come in primarily juniors and seniors, they're doing too little too late, but you really have to start this process beforehand so that when you get to that point, we're even more prepared and ready to go. So as we scroll down to sophomore year, there is such a thing as the PSAT or the pre-ACT. It is recommended that these seniors, or rather the sophomores take the exam at that time of the year in the fall of sophomore year so that they get a range of where they should score. And then as they progress into the spring of their sophomore year is to then start asking their guidance counselors some more questions as it relates to, well, when should I take this exam and when should I properly prepare? Because there is such a thing as taking too long to study for these exams. You don't want to have test fatigue stretching almost a full calendar year, but knowing when to take it at get-go is very critical. And among other things that we'll say is that if you go down to the end of the sophomore year checklist, you'll notice that one of the things is to start reaching out to a place like us at Huntington and start scheduling, if nothing else, a practice ACT or SAT to see where does a student of this nature land among us. I think the average student who takes an SAT with us is kind of in the mid to upper 900s, if I'm not mistaken, which is almost average. But if you're trying to put yourself into that caliber of I want to go to UCF or USF or UF, you're quite a few hundred points away from that goal. But it's not an impossible task, as Weiwei has said. We've seen students with multiple hundred points of increase for sure. Or if it's the ACT, if they score about maybe a 16, 17, 18, which is still on track, but not near the mid 20s and higher than a lot of colleges aspire to have. It's helpful to have that baseline. And so also to proving that we have the programs and we have the material to back us up so that no matter where the student is to start, we can get them to close that gap altogether. So junior year is when you really have to start kicking things in high gear, because I think, as we all know from experiences, junior year is that major year that colleges look at for, is this somebody that is going to be worthy of an admission seat? This is when we do highly encourage all these testers who come to us, whether they ultimately enroll or not, to make sure you register for this test sooner than later, because the last thing we need to find out, and I hate to say it kind of happened to someone recently, we had a student test with us for a while, come to find out that, they forgot about registering for the October ACT. I'm like, what was all this for? I mean, they still have time to take the December test, so all is not lost, but they're really kind of putting all their eggs in one basket and hoping that they get that ultimate score goal that they want. But really, it's just a matter of following through a test prep program like us, because knowing all the different steps that they have to take, knowing how to take things stepwise at a time, we don't just try to cram a whole book's worth of information in one or two settings. We definitely want to make sure that the student is pacing themselves over the course of several weeks or a couple months with practice tests interspersed throughout, and just to make sure that when they finally do take that test officially, that they are really hitting their stride, so that, when they finally do get that score report and they see that they got a 1330 or a 27 on the ACT or whatever that they feel like this is what I'm aiming to achieve, then they can feel all the more satisfied that all their hard work and all their persistence has truly paid off. Because if we progress into the latter half of junior year, going into that following winter and spring, now we start looking at more of the actual college application process itself. And certainly, for those who maybe are just now figuring out, oh, shoot, I need to go ahead and start preparing for the ACT or the SAT, still not too late if you're trying to get a head start, because it's better to go ahead and prepare a little sooner, even in the second half of junior year, even if it has to be going into senior year or fall of that senior year. But the sooner we can start the exam prep process, the better, so we can start focusing on the other elements of the application itself, including but not limited to what I feel, if we keep scrolling on, I think one of the more underrated aspects of the application process as we go into that following junior year, spring and all, is not only should we continue with examining by taking these AP exams for those who are taking these courses, but to also go ahead and find a ways to look at scholarship opportunities, find a way to help pay for college. I mean, Florida Bright Futures is by far, the biggest way to really help alleviate that cost. But there are other opportunities that exist if you're trying to get into a particular university, or you come from a certain background, or even if it's just something as simple as just write an essay creatively or historically or what have you, and that could pay for even a couple $1,000s, potentially any little small bit helps. But knowing how to prepare yourself for other aspects, including as well recommendation letters by teachers and guidance counselors and other people that would know you best well, like another person that, if you're working a part-time job, maybe your immediate supervisor would be a great example of this person. Really works hard, gives me his or her all each and every session, very driven, very dedicated, would make a great place to this overall university. My computer's telling me my battery's running low. So pretty quickly, as we get to end of junior year, you start realizing, man, senior year is upon me. I should go ahead and take it easy, right? Not so fast, because there's also the element of being able to write a application essay. To me, maybe the most underrated element of the application process itself. Getting a high test score is one thing, but being able to articulate yourself in the form of the written language, anywhere from maybe 500 to 1,000 words at a time, harder to do than it is to say, right? Like, oh, I can easily write about this topic, and then all of a sudden, a lot of students kind of hit that wall because they just don't know how to best outline their materials, or how best to go write an introduction, body paragraph, conclusion. Getting that set up is very critical to finish strongly, because ultimately, going into senior year, that's when you really have to start narrowing down what you want to do and what you want to major in. I mean, we all want to have, high ambitions for applying to multiple universities, but let's be fair, these applications now ask for quite a bit of money nowadays. And unless if mom or dad's willing to foot the bill on as many applications as you want, you need to start having a realistic plan of maybe 3 to 5 schools of choice, with at least one safety school in case you're feeling like, well, I really want to get into this school, but just in case, I'm okay with maybe this other school. So knowing how to have those options and plan, so that you ultimately don't feel like all this work and what if I just fall short because the admissions process is that competitive, or what if I did everything that I tried and I still fall short. So the sooner the better when it comes to sending the applications out in the fall, like that October, November, December year, applying for early decision or early action, so to speak, because again, to make the college admissions officers' lives easier, if you can send this stuff sooner than later, and especially with that good exam prep score that we can help provide with our tutoring services, if you apply early and they like what you see, then don't be hesitant to accept it. If you feel like this is exactly where I want to go, if I have my heart and mind set on this one place, be it in state or out of state, So it's really just being prepared, having that game plan in mind, not waiting to the last minute. I know senioritis is a term we all like to throw around and kind of joke about, especially as we hit, January, February, March, April of the senior year, because that's when you start saying, man, I can see the finish line. I just want to graduate and be done with it all, but this is not the time to still let up as well, because as we get to the bottom, January through May is really the point in time now where we have to start waiting for acceptances, sometimes even rejections. I mean, it does happen to even the best of us. I mean, don't be afraid or discouraged. It just means that maybe that wasn't a place you were meant to be, but that the next university to tell you yes, maybe they'll be more than happy to have you on, and then you can prove that I am worthy of an admission seat, and that all this hard work and all this time off has been worth the effort and the sweat, and ultimately, once they make you that application offer and you say yes, now's the time to properly, truly relax, to be able to take a deep breath and realize that I'm moving on to that next step in my life, which is extremely critical going forward as it relates to what do you want to do as a major? Where are you going to plan on going to? Are you going to stay nearby? Are you going to go out of state? Or are you going to, do something different with life? But ultimately, this is the process that in these 4 years goes by in the blink of an eye, as we all seem to know. But in these 4 years, I think being able to prepare yourself and not waiting and waking up and realizing I need to do something about it, planning ahead is absolutely critical, because of those who are willing to take those extra steps and precaution to get ahead of the game, they're going to be able to be a lot more prepared for what life is like in college, where there is no hand holding, there is no mom or dad to tell you to wake up or do your homework. You're going to have to do it yourself. And those who I feel like ultimately will succeed in college and beyond are those who come to us with a dream, with a vision, with a plan in action that this is what I want to do. Even if I fall maybe a tad short of maybe my top goal, if I can land into my second choice and prove that I am worthy of that opportunity, those are the students for whom are really going to excel and really go far in life. That's for sure.
So do you find a good amount of the students are overwhelmed by the essay process, and or is it the process of, I mean, is the process the most challenging thing, or is it the whole entire the whole getting ready for college, the prep itself? What's the most challenging thing that you see students when they come to see you?
Would you like me to answer that, Mr. Well? I see
Please,
both.
so I can get my charger.
Sure, go ahead. Go ahead and get your
Sure.
chargers. We don't want to lose you. So we certainly see both, Keith, when they come to us. The most sense that I'm seeing these days are that students don't know when to start
Right.
looking for colleges. What are the resources and scholarship available to them? They can go online and Google a certain school and look at their exams, scores, requirements, right? But they don't really know how that one element fits into the entire process that Mr. Will was saying, in terms of, chronologically, when do I do what first, and how should I put a plan together? So we help them navigate through the whole process by putting a planner together, by working with their guidance counselor. So we are part of the guidance counselor team member too, that they have, full disposable resource on their side. So one thing that Mr. Will pointed out, which is a good point I want to kind of reiterate, is the recommendation letter is something that we can also help provide, Keith. One of our two of our students actually use those recommendation letters that we have written about them, and be able to get into the college successfully that way as well. So certainly that's something that we're happy to provide our students with, which is recommendation letter upon their completion of our program. And then last but not the least, which is the essay itself. The essay is not the essays that the student is to take for the SAT or ACT test.
Right.
Those are optional, and SAT has actually eliminated that altogether. What we're talking about is the college entrance essay.
Right.
Why would the school need to choose you versus, Mr. Will versus Ms. Weiwei? It's that essay that create that, competitive advantage, that differentiation factor. That essay is actually very important. We have a couple of college admission counselor talk to us these days that sometimes it's real all boils down to how passionate those essays are written.
Really?
To choose between A versus B student when they have very similar score goals, very similar super scores, and very similar GPA. It all boils down to that essay, because that essay gives them a little glimpse as how well-rounded that student will be like in their school.
I think parents, unless they're really versed on writing, and if they had, perhaps the parents weren't fortunate enough, or they went a different direction than post high school, college years, if that wasn't part of their life for whatever reason, I think that makes it more challenging for the parents to understand what those kids have to do, when to do it. You cannot always just rely on any of the school districts in the country. I think things have gotten much more complicated from where I sit. Things have gotten much more complicated, uh, and much more action and earlier action is certainly what I'm hearing you say is necessary. So, again, you bring that benefit as well. Anything else you'd like to share on that, Will? Now that I think you have a charge coming into your laptop.
Yes, sir. I definitely have a charge, and I'm glad to still be a part of the live stream. So, yeah. But I mean, to me, I always feel like the essay itself, as I said earlier, to me is the most underrated element because that's truly where the student's voice can be heard, right? Because, the application process itself, I mean, it's so number driven as it relates to GPA, number of extracurricular community service hours, obviously ACT or SAT score goal. But to me, the essay itself cannot be easily quantified. And because it can't be quantified, I think it really takes a very strong student, or at the very least, it takes a good, determined effort to really make yourself known amidst a sea of other numbers where it's so easy to lose sight of the fact that, this guy has a 3.93 GPA and then he's got all of these community service hours. But then what of it if I read his essay and it sounds robotic, if not very clunky, right? I mean, certainly how we present ourselves to the world is not merely how we speak or how we take selfies, it's how we write and how we communicate really to the population at large. And really, it's a very important skill for a lot of things. I mean, certainly when you get to apply to a college, it really is like applying for a job, so to speak. It's really trying to prove to yourself that I am worthy of being a part of your university compared to all these thousands of other applicants who have similar aspirations. But knowing how to start writing, knowing how to create effective transitions, how to make sure that the essay is not overly long or overly short. I mean, those are things that do take time and do take trial and error, but it's something that, with the plan and action, is something that, myself and Ms. Weiwei would certainly be more than happy to look over those essays of a student of ours, or even those who are still looking for a second pair of eyes, or in my case, four. If we're trying to find another opinion to see how best can this essay be, unified, how it can be better, tightened up, how can it be a lot more cohesion? Because really, to me, it brings a human element back into the process. And I know that now more than ever, with a lot more stiffer competition, and people seemingly left and right getting GPAs over 4.0 almost without even trying at times, I feel like being able to show who you are without us knowing exactly who you are, I think is an underrated skill, not only for getting into college, but certainly in life and beyond for those who really want to do more and be more than just, where they're currently at right now.
Yeah, I'm glad you made that point. You're really not talking just about college prep. You're not talking just about test prep. You're not talking about high school, in an isolated fashion. You're talking about the journey of life itself, what becomes past this particular point in the path. So all the more reason why people are looking for what you've been bringing to the community. So a lot of great things shared tonight. Anything else you guys would like to talk about before we end, which we don't have to end?
We can be here all night, right?
Now
yeah.
the laptop charger.
Just need some tea and coffee. No, as always, we really enjoy these sessions with you, Keith. Some of the highlights really just to let the community know that we are a bunch of very passionate educators. I cannot have done this without all the teachers behind me that are so supportive and so vastly interested in making an impact of the students. We do not hire those that cannot put their burdens at the door when they walk in here. All of our teachers are truly have nothing other than the education program for the student that they're helping for that particular afternoon, evening in mind. So just wanted to share that with our community. Check us out if they're looking for that extra help for their child. Choose the right company that truly are passionate. It's the number one key goal when I was making that decision myself. Another thing is to tune in to our Facebook and our social media and our website for these free resources that we're regularly giving out. And I think, Keith, that you have done a few posts for us about our Text 4,000 scholarship, right, Keith?
Yes.
So that will be another things that we encourage parents to check us out. It's very simple. Text the number 4,000 to the number 84444. You will then be able to, answer a couple of quick questions, enter to win $4,000 worth of scholarship with the national sweepstake that we provide to our communities every year. So check us out. These resources are on a weekly basis made available to our community, including the webinars coming up tomorrow.
That's a big deal. So that's on Thursday at 1 p.m. One of you, for those people who are catching us on the back half of the program, why don't you go ahead and how somebody can sign up for that webinar at 1 o'clock on Thursday? Either one of you, just give us the quick route through. You're getting tagged down there, Will.
So as always, we provide this as a free resource. If you go to www.huntingtonhelps.com/St. Cloud FL, that's ST Cloud FL, and you'll find a tab that has our links to our current webinars. And if you click on that most recent webinar, which will be this Thursday, November the 18th at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, they will provide a link for you to register by providing your name, your email, your phone number, just so we can get a sense of these are the types of people who are signing up to get all these tidbits of wisdom available. And as always, if the person in question, if it's yourself or if it's someone you know, if they feel like they definitely need to be in on this, but they can't because 1 o'clock, they're probably still at school, they're running an errand or they're at work, then there'll be a link that'll be provided thereafter. So that way you can watch this after the fact and not feel like you just missed your chance. You have the opportunity to still get all of these 10 strategy tips and reminders, how studying is not merely just, it's not about the quantity, but about the quality, and just ways of really being able to study smarter, not harder, for sure. So that's just, the latest. And then you can go back to our backlog, our library of past webinars. And I believe you should be able to go ahead and watch those as well, even after the fact, just to kind of always see what we provide as well as this free community resource.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's a huge thing. I think we've all made our way through the last almost 2 years. Certainly, we're coming up on that, and I think technology has been something that's helped us get through that, specifically for educational purposes. And you guys have done an outstanding job in providing resources that people can access. I think, to me, I like having that target time. I like knowing it's Thursday at 1 p.m. It's there's no cost, easy to get to, easy to register. I enjoy that, but life is not perfect, and so things get in the way. And so it's always nice to know that you can always do that on demand as well. So I want to make sure I really thank you again, both of you guys. You've made a huge impact on the community. We talk about informing and impacting and inspiring from our business. That's our goal. Those are our goals, to do those things. I know that you do them every day. So we very much appreciate both of you, and are glad that you could take a little bit of time and spend that with us tonight. I'll make sure that we get those appropriate links in, as I said before, I'll get those links into the text of this post today, and make sure people are aware that that's happening, because it's a big deal. And it's amazing to me. A lot of work happens in your world between August and that first big holiday break. For me, it's like it happened in an hour. So my hat's off to you guys for all the work you do, and you do it for, you do it because you care about what happens to these families and these students, and that's a big deal. So thank you both.
Thank you, Keith. You're our eyes, ear, and mouth in this community. So without you, they won't see us. They won't hear feedback. So yeah, we can definitely, enjoy a partnership like your program and your platform.
We're proud to be a part of what you're doing. So a very small part, because you guys are just doing a great thing. So we appreciate you. Will, anything you'd like to say before we cut?
Well, I just remember, it just came to mind that there's an old saying that the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is today. And I bring this up as a metaphor, being that the time to get help academically should have been yesterday, last week, last month, last year before COVID. But this isn't to say that your son or daughter, whoever you have in mind, they still cannot be better versions of themselves. They can still turn it around even today. So don't feel like all is lost if they're not getting it, or that we're just going to let it slide, because that's the last thing we want to have any student to feel like they struggle, they're not getting it, they're not worth it. And that's the farthest thing from truth. And I think what Weiwei has said is certainly about that growth mindset. Ultimately, Keith, is that here at Huntington, what we really want to emphasize is that every student is going to get the best education possible. Any student can learn going through these doors, and that with the staff and the curricula, and certainly myself and Ms. Weiwei leading this team, I feel like we're really going to make a very strong positive impact in this community, not just for certainly to end the year or even 2022, but certainly into the better part of this decade and beyond, proving that this region and this city definitely is worthy of having the best students that we could possibly get.
Well said, perfectly said. I hope that I can coerce you fine folks to come back and have another talk with us very soon.
Absolutely. Enjoy it.
Waiting for that commitment to yes.
Just make that last minute phone call, Keith. It will happen.
I'm telling you, you got it. All right. Well, I want to thank you one last time. Certainly Weiwei Wong with Huntington Learning Center, and Will Morea, of course, also from Huntington. We appreciate you guys very much. Looking forward to see. I'm working.
It only took over a full year, but you finally got it.
Repetition is good for young minds. So they say. All right. So again, with Keith with Positively Osceola, along with Weiwei from Huntington, along with Will Morea from Huntington, together making a positive difference in and around Osceola County. Thanks for being here, guys.